Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. Andy Ruiz Jr. has a choice now. Who does he face next? Chris Arreola or Mahmoud Charr, who was formerly known as Manuel Charr? It looked like it was going to be Arreola, that was signed, sealed and delivered, and perhaps it is, but Mahmoud Charr has come in quite late in the piece with very public call-out saying, fight me, you'll have the opportunity to fight for my WBA regular title. And I've seen quite a bit of debate online, social media, boxing forums, etc., about who they would prefer to see Ruiz in against of those two names. And just for the purpose of the video, we're not talking about other names because Ruiz has stated he is going to have a tune-up next, and it's likely to be one of these two guys. So talk of, say, Luis Ortiz or other names within PBC, or even other fighters like a Joshua rematch, we can park that for now because he's not taking those fights. It's been well stated he's going to have a tune-up, and that's likely to be either Arreola or potentially now Manuel Charr, who's made this late run. And there is an argument to say that Manuel Charr has the more divisional relevance, but there's pros and cons on either side here, and that's what I want to talk about in this video because personally, I think the Chris Arreola fight makes some sense. It's going to be fan-friendly. It's probably going to be a better fight, and I'll go through some of these points. And the Mahmoud Charr one, the really only carrot there that I can see is that he could take that strap, but we'll get to that. But starting with Arreola, the pros of taking that fight. It's two Mexican-American fighters. This fight has been long talked about. It's sort of been brewing for about 5 or 6 years. Probably has sort of gone off the boil at this point. Probably needed to happen 2 or 3 years ago if we're realistic. And this could be the last chance, that there is an opportunity to have that fight, milk that for what it's worth before it sort of, completely is off the table. Remembering Chris Arreola, if he has another loss or two, he may retire altogether. Remembering that he was semi-retired and only came back a year or two ago. He had a good fight with Adam Kovnarski, and that sort of spurred him to stay on fighting in the heavyweight division. And obviously he's been stating publicly, along with his trainer Joe Goosen, that they've had some good news, and the reports in recent months suggest that this fight is all but a done deal, but not announced yet. But then again, the Fox and PBC schedule hasn't been released, and that probably could be a reason why. But Manuel Charr with this late run, we'll get to that soon. But the Arreola fight, I think there is an audience for it. And let's face it, I think the styles will mesh well. It's going to be a fun fight, an action fight. Arreola coming forward, swinging, letting his hands go. Andy Ruiz Jr. using that hand speed, that blaring hand speed to sort of pick Arreola apart. I think, he'll be looking for those counters all night long or for as long as the fight will last. And people still remember the good effort that Chris Arreola put in against Kovnarski last year. They had a real barn burner. It was a couple of thousand punches. He lost, it was relatively conclusive on the cards. It wasn't as close as he believes it was, but it was a fun fight, a good fight. He put up a good effort, but it was still a losing effort, but he still got some good credit from that. And the work that Arreola will give, I think it is the sort of ideal tune-up that sort of sets Ruiz Jr. up for a bigger fight, because he is going to win that fight against Chris Arreola. I don't think there's any doubt in my mind about the result of that one, but I do think there is going to be some decent action, some, a bit of a firefight and a bit of a war for however long it lasts. And even if it goes the distance, I'm sure it will be one of those fights that will be talked about as that was a good action fight. And another reason that it happens now is it probably is the last time you can realistically make this. I mean, the interest probably starts to wane from here because Ruiz will be onto bigger and better things, and the chance to come back to it, by the time they could come back to it, it may have sort of completely passed. Arreola may not be in the division anymore. He is 39 after all. And I guess a con for this fight happening, there's no belt on the line. It really just is bragging rights and pride, fighting to an audience of Mexican-American fans and obviously boxing fans more broadly. But it would be sold as a real sort of humdinger for these two, long overdue, and it would be sort of the pride of Mexico type thing, heavyweights really going at it. It would be sold along those lines, potentially even having it on a Mexican holiday. You could sort of see that. In terms of Manuel Charr, he will want to play spoiler here. He's been coming out publicly very strongly, basically sort of saying, take the fight, Ruiz. It's a title fight. I'm giving you a title shot. Take it. If you don't take it, what sort of fighter are you? It's that sort of rhetoric. He's made a poster sort of saying, we can have this fight. It could be in Mexico. So we'll see what happens in terms of this talk, because at this point it is talk. There have been, the usual sort of YouTube clickbait merchants sort of saying that Ruiz is returning against Charr, but nothing is guaranteed at this point, at the point that this video was recorded. Manuel Charr has said his promoter, Errol Silan of EC Boxing, that's based in Germany, he is going to be talking to Al Haymon when he's over in the United States. So they're looking to get some talks underway. That's where it's at. Manuel Charr, or Mahmoud Charr, he is hopeful the fight can come off. So if anyone has said that the fight is made, they're just sort of talking out their rear end at this point. But his promoter is looking to talk about this fight, and I guess the pro here, Charr has a version of a heavyweight world title. And for what it's worth, and bear in mind it, carries some prestige, albeit a diminishing amount, given that there's 4 champions in the WBA. But it's a good marketing tool to have a belt of sorts on the line. PBC often likes to use those regular title belts from the WBA. There's a lot of their fighters that have them. It can play a part in Ruiz's rebuild, that he's got back to some version of a heavyweight title. It's a springboard from there onto something bigger afterwards. But apart from that, I don't see too many other attractive points for the fight, except to say Ruiz, when he wins, and he will, Charr, who's been holding that belt hostage for 3 years not fighting, he will disappear into the ether and stop parading around like he's on the level of the elite heavyweights. He believes he is an elite heavyweight, completely deluded, delusional guy. Charr has been inactive for the past 3 years, and he was never that great to begin with. So how much credit fans will be willing to give Ruiz? It's a question, but you can also say, does it really matter? Because I'm sure fans will delight to some extent in the often delusional Manuel Charr losing the belt and drifting off, and then Ruiz has a trinket to sort of parlay into a bigger fight, potentially with someone within the PBC stable, maybe a Luis Ortiz, or onto one of the champions perhaps. But then again, they're sort of tied up for the next year or so, so Ruiz will have to stay busy and active and fight someone. And off the back of a Charr or Arreola fight, he'll want a good performance against a good name, and then be able to sort of say, look, I deserve a title shot. He believes he already does, and he said that he is going to have the rematch with Joshua. He said it was going to be by the end of this year, which was always a non-starter. I think for a lot of fans, he needed to work his way back, given he didn't, put a full effort in for the rematch. There is at this point a limited appetite from a lot of fans to see Ruiz in straight for a title shot, given how he didn't really fire too many shots in that rematch and admitted afterwards that he didn't train properly. That didn't really engender himself to fans. But of this Charr fight, if it happened, Ruiz steamrolls him. Charr gets the payday he's been seeking, drifts off into obscurity, but I don't actually see this being a great fight. I'm not sure the style clash is as good as the Arreola one. I think that fight, the Arreola one, lends itself more to a fan-friendly fight. But Charr, he probably is likely to be sparked by Ruiz, so there is that to add to the highlight reel and get people talking. And perhaps there is one barrier, though, to this fight happening. For all the talk of Mahmoud Charr, Manuel Charr, it's one thing to say, I want the fight, I'm prepared to make the fight. But he's likely to want a massive payday. Remember, this guy's been trying to cash out against big names for the past couple of years and hasn't had really a proper bite. This isn't a pay-per-view worthy fight. So is there really the money around to pay him the sort of purse that he would be wanting? Remember, for the Trevor Bryan fight that was going to be made ahead of the pandemic, he was due to get $1.5 million US. Would they be willing to pay him that to get that belt? It's a question. The finances may sort of end up sort of scuppering any opportunity to make that fight. And you can better believe if that happened, Charr would turn around and say Ruiz ducked him, which we all know wouldn't be the case because he's the guy that's really trying to sell his belt in this situation. But stepping back, out of these two guys, who do you want to see Ruiz face? I would prefer the Arreola fight. I just think that's going to be a more aesthetically pleasing in terms of the action. And the Charr one, well, you've got the trinket to put on the line. Ruiz can say he's got a version of a heavyweight title and, you know, on the road to getting his belts back, as he sort of keeps saying. So, yeah, let me know. Drop a comment loud and often. Hit like, hit subscribe. Follow me on Twitter, boxing_squared. I'm out.